Hi, my name's Rebecca Elder, and I'm a preservation consultant based in Austin, Texas. Today we're going to talk about Preservation 101, how to safely store your documents and photographs. All right, storage supplies, or what do we use to put this stuff in anyhow? Because using poor quality storage supplies will cause irreparable damage to your collections. The good news is that you probably have a lot more control over what boxes you buy than what temperature your thermostat is set at. So you can make some really good decisions here. There's a little bit of terminology that you need to know. The first is if something is marketed as acid-free, that means at the time of manufacture, it has a pH of 7.0 or higher. To remind everyone about high school chemistry, because it's been a long time for me, pH is a scale of 0 to 14, and at 0, every molecule is acidic. At 14, every molecule is alkaline. And at 7, it's a 1-to-1 balance. And it's a logarithmic scale, which means that if you have a pH of 9, it's 10 times more alkaline than a pH of 8, and a pH of 3 is 10 times more acidic than a pH of 4. If somebody is telling you the pH on something you're buying to store paper in, you're looking for somewhere between 7 and 8.5. However, the easiest way to just test is to spend $6 or $7 and buy yourself a pH testing pen, which you can buy from the major archival suppliers, and just test it. It's easy. The directions are on the pen. The second term is lignin-free. So you remember lignin from 20 minutes ago. If something is marketed as lignin-free, you have less than 1% lignin content. So something lignin-free is going to last much longer than something that's just acid-free. Make sense? And then finally, there is material that's alkaline buffered. And that means that a chemical reserve, usually calcium carbonate, which is that chemical formula, it's just there for a visual. You don't need to know the chemistry again. But that alkaline reserve is going to neutralize those acids as they're created. So if you put that piece of crummy newsprint in an alkaline buffered folder, the alkaline buffer is going to actually sort of pull the acids out of the newsprint and neutralize them. Which is pretty cool. There are a couple things you don't want to use them on. Use alkaline buffered blueprints and color photographs because the chemicals will interact and cause color shifting. And textiles, particularly anything that's dyed or anything that is wool or silk. So if it's made out of an animal, don't use alkaline buffered. So those are the three terms you're going to look at. The best, longest lasting paper is going to be alkaline buffered, lignin free. Oh, and make sure, oh, no, that was coming up later. Sorry, never mind. So plastics. We love plastics because they give us immediate and clear visual access to items without actually having to put our grubby mitts on them. They're very strong, and they will protect your fragile materials from handling, damage. So we use them for lots of things. We use them for encapsulating brittle paper, and if you want to learn that, you can come to my 345 session next door. We use them for making folders and sleeves and exhibits. But plastics vary in chemical stability, and the unstable ones are really pretty horrifying. They have plasticizers that will cause bleeding in media. They break down and produce acids that will accelerate deterioration. So the takeaway is there are exactly 3 plastics that you are allowed to use in archives. The first is polyester, which is also known as Mylar. It's the trade name. So Mylar is to polyester as Xerox is to photocopy. It is the same plastic as every soda bottle. It's recycling symbol 1, polyethylene terephthalate. And you know how long that plastic is going to last in a landfill? And it's horrible. In an archives, it's going to last exactly that long, and it's awesome. So it's all about the context. Polypropylene. I tend to think of polypropylene oftentimes as the plastic that they make those Sterilite tubs out of. We use it shows up in other places, but it's media boxes often. And then polyethylene, we can use it to make sleeves for photographs and negatives and phonograph records. The plastic you never, ever, ever want to use is polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, which if you go to the office supply store and buy something called page protectors or document protectors, unless it's marked as another kind of plastic, you're getting polyvinyl chloride. And when it deteriorates, it releases hydrochloric acid, which is a nice strong acid that causes deterioration. You also find PVC in 3-ring binders. And if you have ever opened a 3-ring binder and had that sheet of paper, the top sheet stick to the plastic, and then you pull it off and all of your photocopy is now on the binder, not on your paper, that's the plasticizers interacting with your page. So pretty devastating. I'm not a big fan of 3-ring binder, 3-ring as a format, because I think it's too easy to tear the paper. But there are situations where people are very married to 3-ring binders. I think of it like a genealogy thing a lot of the time. Genealogists like to use 3-ring binders in their research. You can buy good quality acid-free boxes that have that 3-ring binder hardware in them, so you can get the best of both worlds. Fasteners. There are so many ways to put paper together. Paper clips, staples, binder clips, rubber bands. You have not lived until you've been stuck with a straight pin the size of a nail that somebody has used to hold 19th century paper together. They're vicious. They're like this. String and ties. There are so many bad ways that you can put paper together and so few good ones. So you want to think about what kind of damage your fasteners are causing to your artifacts. If you have modern paper with staples, it may not be causing any damage, but if you end up with something like this little rusting paper clip up here, that's pretty problematic and you want to remove them. When you remove fasteners, and if you Google how to remove staples, don't use one of the little pinchy crab claw staple remover things that you get at the office supply store, because it'll rip gigantic holes in your paper. You want to pry the staples apart and pull them out gently. My favorite thing to use to replace fasteners, if I'm taking apart a letter, I will just fold a piece of paper in half like this and put the pages inside of this new little subfolder that I've made. I love that. I think it's inexpensive, it's elegant. Well, if I would have taken the time to fold this well, it would have been elegant. It gives me a place to write here, Sam Houston letter, 5 pages, so that I know what's supposed to be in there. That's my favorite way. But if you are really married to the idea of using something like a paper clip, you want to use a stainless steel paper clip or a staple. And in my best possible world, you'll cut Mylar into 1" by 4" strips, fold that over your paper, and then slide the paper clip on over the Mylar. And that way, how many times have you taken a paper clip off and ripped the paper when you took the clip off? You have some protection against that. You have some protection if your clip ever rusts or does anything funky. So some quick housing tips for flat paper. Anything up to legal size can be housed in file folders inside of document boxes like that. If you can only afford good quality file folders or good quality boxes, file folders are more important because they're closer to your objects. Make sense? And you want everything to be perfectly aligned so that all the edges are supported. Label with pencil, because if you type those labels on sticky labels, those labels are going to fall off. Pen will fade, potentially run if it gets wet. Pencil stays put, and if you drop a pencil on your document, you can erase it. That doesn't happen if you drop a ballpoint pen. And finally, see how all these folders are standing up perfectly straight and tall? That's what you want to see. When you see slumping, you can end up getting permanent deformation to your paper. You also don't want things to be so tight that you're going to get them out of the box and cramming them back in, because you will do damage to the paper. So kind of tall enough that everything's supported, or sorry, full enough that everything's supported, but not so full that it's painful. And if you need to, you can build a spacer out of corrugated blue board, or you can buy pre-made spacers that just will fold up into the back and give you that support. And then oversized materials. Oh my goodness. This, in case you were worried, is not how I would recommend storing oversized materials, but it is a really great picture. So oversized materials ideally would be put in either oversized boxes or flat files. You don't want to fold them up to put into a document box or roll them to fit into a box that's too small. Instead, make yourself a little sheet that says object blah, blah, blah has been moved to location XYZ, and that maintains your archival order, but also keeps your object safe. So ideally flat, but if things are already rolled and never used, you may keep them rolled and store them on their sides. You don't want to store them on their bottom because gravity will pull them out of a line, pull them down, and you'll end up with creases and pleats around the bottom. And if things are too large to store flat, in my dream world, you'll roll them around the outside of an acid-free tube and then wrap them with acid-free paper or Mylar to keep the dust out. So you have the support and the dust protection, but you don't want to roll them up. Remember when you had posters in your room and you would roll them up really tightly and put them into a tube, and then they would go and expand to fill the tube? Yeah, when you pull those out, you run the risk of doing a lot of damage, which is why we don't stick things inside of tubes. And then photographs. The big rule on photos. Photographic materials must be stored in enclosures that have passed the photographic activity test, which is also abbreviated PAT. And if you go into the exhibit hall and you go over to Gaylord and Hollinger Metal Edge and University Products and get their catalogs, which you really should because you can learn a lot by reading the catalogs, you'll see that all of their photo products are marked has passed the photographic activity test. But you can either sleeve, so you can, the dream storage is to individually sleeve things, either using good quality paper or plastic enclosures. Plastic you use when things are in good condition. Paper I tend to use when things begin to deteriorate, and I know that's counterintuitive because you're thinking we can't see through the paper, but plastic doesn't allow the acids being created by the deterioration to escape the way paper does. So it's so plastic kind of speeds deterioration. Ideally, you will not write on the back of your prints at all. But if you must, make minimal notations using soft pencil in the edges, being very careful not to emboss through so that you can see the writing when you turn the picture over. If you have photos that are mounted or are on some kind of a backing, leave them there. That backing is helping restrain the photo and keep it its proper shape. If you think the backing is damaging, that's when it's time to consult a paper conservator. And finally, perhaps the most important thing of all, if you're exhibiting photographs, with very rare exceptions, you want to exhibit copies. Most of the photographs you're going to be holding in your collections, what's really interesting about them is the information, not the actual photograph. Right? Like if you had a Matthew Brady photograph, that would be really interesting because it was a Matthew Brady photograph. But if it's just a photograph by some random photographer of your town, the important thing is the photograph of the town. So if you exhibit the photograph, you're cutting down on all the light damage of exhibit, and photos are very, very, very vulnerable to light damage. All right. Oh, this is perfect. So I have that it is 11:40, and we have until 12:15. Yes? So why don't we take a shot at this case study and just see what happens with it.